What's up guys, Bajheera here. Wanted to give a quick shout out to our Designed by Humans official merchandise store. It's a great place to pick up any sort of t-shirts, gear, or apparel that you might want. It's available year-round and ships internationally. So check it out, links in the description, and enjoy the video. Thanks guys. Alright, so I'm going to call this video How to Deal with RMP/WMP from an Arms Warrior perspective. Now this does not mean that my gameplay is by any means perfect. I just wanted to share with you guys some insights from two games in particular that I thought went pretty well, and that might be helpful for you guys in your arena adventures. Alright, so the game is going to start off with me getting cheap-shotted, and one of the things that I could think of to do better is maybe just be a little bit closer to my mage right in the beginning so that if some of that fire damage does cleave, it'll break the poly for me. But what's going to happen here is I'm going to get polymorphed 3 times in a row and Nova'd. I'm going to go ahead and use Avatar to break that Nova, and I'm going to open up with a stun here, along with Battle Cry and Sharpened Blade, just to establish some pressure. Now later in the game, I'll probably be a little bit more stingy with my cooldowns, but since I already used Avatar to break that root, I figured we may as well pop that Battle Cry along with it. And it does force the mage to blink, which means that he has to be out in the middle of the map, and that makes him an easier target for Venruki to hit, but it also means that Sidhu can sneak around to the Paladin's pillar and land CC better. I do think that it's a better idea for me to save my offensive cooldowns for a little bit more of a setup, because as you saw there, me using Battle Cry with the Paladin right next to me being able to free heal wasn't that effective. But if I had Battle Cry for a moment like this when we landed a full sheep, that would be way more effective. Fortunately, I was able to stop the follow-up CC. And that is going to bring me to one of the main things that I want to talk about in this video, even if it's less of like a play-by-play kind of thing. One of the things that I want you guys to look out for in this video is how I'm deciding to use my interrupts. And fortunately for me, I'm playing with Sidhu, who is super vocal about which CCs are the most important ones to stop. So you'll notice me being able to stop 2 Rings of Frost there, which is pretty much the only way he can actually get CC'd in that situation. And by stopping those, it definitely puts this RMP on their back foot. And since Sidhu is not in CC, he's able to land a clone on the Paladin. I'm able to chase the mage, stun him, use my offensive cooldowns, and force an ice block there, which is already, you know, one pretty major cooldown out of the way because fire mages don't have multiple ice blocks. And then right after that, we're also going to be able to force the Cauterize. So at this point, we definitely are chopping through the fire mages cooldowns, but as you guys probably know if you've played any amount of arena, is that fire mages seem to be able to live for a very long time, especially when paired up with a paladin or something like that, and a rogue that can peel for them. So the game's definitely not over yet, but that little first exchange was definitely a good example of how using your interrupts well and using them definitely patiently on the right CC makes a big difference for you being able to stay alive, but also being able to counter pressure. Another point that's somewhat similar is communicating on when you can stop CC with your partner. Like a lot of times in melee cleave, it's one of those first things that I recommend you guys learning to do, which is say, okay, like who has the next pummel on it? Like if you guys are training a healer or training a, you know, a shadow priest, something like that, and there's like very obvious spells that you want to interrupt, like, you know, you're gonna make sure that you communicate that. Similarly to this situation, I'm communicating with Ven whether or not I have a reflect, whether or not I have a pummel, or whether I need him to use his counterspell to land a lockout to keep me out of polymorphs, things like that. So that's another big aspect of communication. Another thing right there is you're noticing I'm probably holding on to fear quite a bit. Right there I saw a triple fear that would have interrupted a CC chain and, you know, crowd controlled the whole team. Unfortunately, the rogue shadow stepped away from my fear, but we were still able to land a fear on the paladin, which let Venruki sheep him out of my fear. But as I went to Bladestorm the incoming polymorph, it actually broke Venruki's sheep, which is really unfortunate because he may have been able to land a second one, so that's definitely my bad there. And it also kind of puts us in an awkward spot because then I'm able to get sheeped by the mage as well. And we cyclone the mage there, which definitely limits my damage that I'm going to be able to do to him, but fortunately Venruki is about half health, and the peel on the mage is very important. So against rogue mage, you definitely have to play, I mean, aggressively for sure. You want to shut down the mage, do as much damage as you can, but having your mind on the defensive is one of the things that I feel like helped me out a lot in this matchup. This is something that can be very difficult for us, and was very difficult for us. This team was giving us trouble. But in this game in particular, I feel like I learned from it a lot in the fact that I was much more patient with my interrupts. I was very patient with the way that I decided to use my crowd control. It sounds weird, but I basically, eventually, as you'll notice, tried to not force offensive pressure like I did in the beginning of that match. I feel like I had like a little bit of a learning experience during this matchup where it's like, I mean, it sounds obvious after the fact, but a lot of times I'm going to be using my Stormbolts to counter pressure, basically. Like they're going to try to land a polymorph, and I'm going to Stormbolt the polymorph instead of saying, okay, I want to do damage here, so I'm going to stun to do damage. It's kind of like almost the opposite of Turbo Cleave, like where every stun in Turbo Cleave is going to be used offensively, whereas a lot of my interrupts in CC and Warrior Mage is going to be used defensively. And of course, that's mostly insight about this particular matchup of Warrior Mage versus Rogue Mage, or just another basically Mage Melee X team. Small piece of advice is you're noticing that I'm in battle stance for a lot of this match, because I don't think that I'm super subject to getting swapped to, just judging by the way these guys have played. But when I am across the map pretty much by myself, that's a fine time to swap into D stance. And I know I just spent a lot of time talking about how I don't necessarily want to use my Stormbolts to force offensive pressure. Venriki's already got the mage really, really low, basically by himself, and the mage is trying to get all the way across the map to finally get some stuff rolling. So basically, by the time he gets there, that's going to be when he's going to start to try to get pressure rolling. So I'm going to go ahead and preemptively stun him on that, and then I get a lot of damage. We get some health bar chunk, and we're going to force wings out of the paladin. Now, I mentioned that I want to use my fear to break up CC chains, and I used my fear for two reasons there. One, because I wanted to fear the melee wings instantly for the paladin, and two, I wanted to stop the Ring of Frost by the mage. Now, what I should have been ready for is the mage trinketing in my fear and immediately casting another Ring of Frost, because I could have just walked over there and pummeled him and been ready for that. So that's another thing that I'm gonna, encourage you guys to learn, is that be ready for follow-up CC, basically, especially fear. A lot of people like to trinket fear, and that's something that you can even just use in BGs or duels or whatever. Is use your fear, people trinket it, and then you can land a full stun on them with no response by them at all. So that's just one little small piece of advice, and it definitely applies to this situation right here. And you'll notice that a lot of times when I play Turbo Cleave, that's a big part of what we do, is we look for big fears on offensive pushes, and if anybody gets impatient and trinkets it, they definitely become a target for a swap later on. So we've done a good enough job at stopping this Rogue Mage Paladin setups this game that we're able to sort of just wear them down, and that's kind of the effect that Warrior Mage can have against Rogue Mage. I land a juicy Mortal Strike on this mage, because I did land 2 executes right before he got Blessing of Sacrifice, which is why I swapped onto the Rogue, and the mage is going to blink away at half health, full poly on the Paladin, which allows me to swap to the Rogue really quickly and kill him. So if you guys learn anything from this particular matchup, I know I didn't really do as much play-by-play, and I was just kind of just sharing thoughts. The main thought is play mostly defensively and wear them down. And this is going to be another situation of that. This is going to be a Warrior Mage Druid against a Warrior Mage Paladin. Now, do notice that the mage that I'm playing with, Venriki, is playing Arcane, so a little bit different. I think Fire is definitely good against Arcane, but we end up doing okay here. So in the beginning there, like, I keep my kick really patiently, and then I'm ready to kick quickly the next cast, which is a fireball, which is unfortunate. So that was just me being a bit of a noob. Fortunately, it works out for me okay, because I reflect the next polymorph, stun him, and he gets bopped on it. And then shortly thereafter, we're able to fear the paladin into a polymorph, which is able to force ice block on the mage when we get back on him. So it's actually really not a bad start for us, despite me kind of being a noob. And you'll notice one of the ways that I like to use Sharpen Blade here is whenever my Arcane Mage is using Arcane Missiles, that's a lot of damage, and it's about, like, I don't know, like a 3-4 second channel, maybe, probably not that long, but anyway, sharpening the Arcane Missiles is kind of like a fun little tactic. And you'll notice me here, not only am I trying to be really patient with my pummel there, is I'm actually using line of sight to avoid the polymorphs. So that's another neat little gameplay addition you guys can put in your arsenal there, is even if you don't have a lockout, you can always sort of just dip and dodge behind LOS between globals just to avoid CC and just be a little bit annoying, so you can save yourself your reflect or your pummel for CCs that are a little bit more important, because not only are you keeping your own cooldowns available for yourself, you're also really delaying them. If they're just going to keep trying to cast CC on you, they're not doing damage, and they're falling a little bit further and further behind as you go. So we're actually able to make a quick swap onto the Paladin there and force Bubble, which is really, really nice for us. So we're getting cooldowns out of pretty much the whole team at will. And right here is when the game sort of starts to slip just a little bit. I get faked pretty bad. I tried to go for a quick kick instead of being patient, which is what I've been talking about. It's just another opportunity to learn from that lesson. And Rubkov is a tremendous Paladin, and he if you make any small mistakes, he's going to take advantage of that. So he basically goes from 10% health to full health instantly because I missed my kick. So now we have to play a little bit more defensive again. But since we did force Bubble, that's still something that we need to keep in mind. Now, I tried to go for a Leap Fear on both the Mage and the Paladin there. Unfortunately, I only hit the Paladin, which is probably, like, the target I least am concerned with hitting because he's already so DR'd on Fear. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to stop the ring and delay the Hodge just slightly. which is another important part. I know that I'm just basically just going stream of consciousness arena tips here. Hopefully it's helpful. Hopefully it's entertaining. Hopefully you guys can at least mute me and watch the gameplay if you need to. But knowing comp CC chain is very, very important. A lot of times what like this composition can do is, for example, one of their big ones to watch out for is fear into Hodge into sheep, or even just without, in any of those things can go together. You know, fear into sheep, Hodge into sheep. You know, any combination of those things can be employed to very, very devastating effect, especially because Hodge and fear are instant. Obviously, they're longer cooldowns, so something that you're gonna have to worry about less often. But it's still very important. So understanding what the enemy team is trying to do, understanding their scary CC chain that you are expected to be able to stop is very important. So even though I missed my fear there, that's kind of the reason why I was going for it. I knew that the Hodge and Ring was coming. And that's something that I wanted to stop. Fortunately, once again, you know, Cedo is excellent at communicating those sorts of things. So, you know, that's also very, very helpful. But during this entire time when we're attacking the mage, we were eyeing this paladin. So even though I got faked there on my kick, I had a Stormbolt ready for the next global. I was able to stop the polymorph. Not able to stop this Ring of Frost, but I am bladestorming both the mage and the pally here. And since the pally is so close and he's a little bit vulnerable, we're actually able to swap to him with a Colossus Smash, land a kick, and take this guy out before I get polymorphed a second time, which is a bit of a lucky kill there. But you know, if you have the awareness and if your team communicates about interrupts that you have and about swap opportunities, you guys can do a good job. So once again, I know I feel like I just rambled like crazy during this video, but I do hope it was helpful. Hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I'm happy to make more commentaries, stream of consciousness or otherwise, for you guys in the future. Either way, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.